In this corner, Dr. Otto Octavius, better known as Doc Ock, as he appeared in the 1990s Spider-Man animated series. And in this corner, a frail, feeble old lady. Okay, this isn't actually going to be a versus. Consider it more of a showcase. Today, we're spotlighting the Marvel Legends Doc Ock and Aunt May 2-pack and seeing if these two retro icons belong in your display, or if they were better left in the past. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation, where I review action figures and then articulate 5 points to help you decide if you want to add that figure to your collection. The 5 points I discuss are packaging, presentation, posability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and if you enjoy my content, please like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube rigmarole. Starting off with the packaging, and this is one windowless box I am completely okay with. Although bigger, it has the same proportions and style as a VHS tape, specifically 2 tapes. Although it doesn't function like one, it's designed like a slipcase with 2 cassettes in it. They even modeled the Marvel Legends logo after the VHS icon. That said, the overall look is taken from the old Toy Biz animated series line. And is it just me, or does Aunt May like what she sees? Not to brag, but I am very handsy, especially compared to her look of disdain on the front. Perhaps too handsy. On the back, we see the figures we're getting. Down here, it says there are 2 figures and 4 accessories. How much do we want to bet that they're talking about the tentacles, even though the tentacles are part of his body? That, of course, is a conversation for playability. As for packaging, I'm giving this 2-pack 1 whole point. Moving on to presentation, Dr. Octopus stands at 6 1/4 inches, and Aunt May stands at about 5 3/4. I hope you don't mind, but for the purposes of presentation and posability, I'm going to be leaving the tentacles off. It just makes it easier to futz around with them. Starting off with Aunt May, and I've got to tell you, I've been waiting for this figure for years. Not necessarily the animated Aunt May, but just any Aunt May in general. Especially that one. Awooga! I know I'd smash! The fact that she comes out of a 90s cartoon is very evident by her wardrobe. She's rocking a skirt suit with a bright turquoise coat that practically matches my background, and this contrasting lavender skirt, but the pop of a fuchsia power tie. I suspect that the legs are reused, but I can't speak to the skirt or shoes. If it is reused, the most likely candidate would be Moira McTaggart, but I don't have that figure. The hands appear to be new and sufficiently bony, as is this head sculpt. Even though this is based on the animated series, thanks to the sculpted and face-printed detail, I think it could definitely pass for comic. The only real difference from the comic is the hairstyle and color. That said, this version is sufficiently wizened for my taste. Moving over to Otto Octavius, and this is a 100% new sculpt. Even the hands are new, which you can tell by the little Bugs Bunny stripes on the back. What's up, Doc Ock? Zeroing in on that face, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Arnold Schwarzenegger. The power of the sun in the palm of my hand. Though that is appropriate since Arnie was considered for the role back when James Cameron was going to do the live-action movie. Although this version's a cartoon, I think the face is very nicely painted, and I'm very happy to see that the only cell shading is in the reflection of his glasses. Turning him to the side, we can really see that Arnold comparison, as well as appreciate that signature bowl cut. Moving down, this is a much buffer and more armored look than we're used to seeing for Otto. The abs kind of remind me of the armor that Michael Keaton wore in Batman Returns. The chest piece and shoulders hinder articulation but do look nice. But even though it's cartoon accurate, I do have to say this orange is a bit bright for my taste. And I clearly love orange. Flipping around, we see the backpack for the tentacles. It's been cast in a marbleized plastic. On the subject of color, though, I do want to take a moment to say how impressed I am that all these different green pieces match. I was concerned by a couple of pictures I saw, but these are actually very even. And speaking of being even, both figures are pretty equally awesome. For presentation, I'm giving Doc Ock and Aunt May 1 whole point. Moving on to posability, and I have to admit the articulation scheme between these 2 figures is very, very different, and I'm kind of happy that this isn't a versus. From the top in Otto's head's in a dumbbell joint, there's also a separate joint in the base of his neck. Using both, you can look up this far, and you can look down this far. Aunt May's head's in a ball joint and a disc hinge. In spite of her longer hair, she can look up this far, and she can hang her head completely in disappointment at how Peter's never around. Seriously though, if you have a special aunt or grandma or just plain maternal figure in your life you're on good terms with but haven't spoken to in a while, give them a call. I promise they want to hear from you. In combination with both joints, and Otto gets a pretty good amount of tilt, but honestly so does Aunt May. Because of the shoulder pads, Otto can only raise his arms up this far. Luckily, he has 4 others we'll be talking about in the next category. As for Aunt May, she can raise her arm up this high, which I'm pretty surprised by. That said, she doesn't have any kind of bicep swivel or double jointed elbow. She does, however, get single jointed elbows that can bend this deep and swing out this wide to welcome you to the table for some hot, delicious wheat cakes. Otto, on the other 7 hands, has bicep swivel and pinless double jointed elbows that admittedly don't bend too deep. That's because of the gauntlets. And while I can't speak to your experience, mine had a bit of chewing when I bent it. That said, both figures have swivel hinge wrists. Moving to the middle, you'll notice there isn't any kind of ab crunch or diaphragm joint. Instead, OCK has a ball joint in the waist. It allows him to arch back this far, though I would imagine it would be further if not for this backpack. And he can hunch forward this far, which isn't great, but it's something. He also gets a bit of tilt and twist. Conversely, Aunt May can only twist. She's also a bit of a traffic cone, with her legs being mostly useless. Peeking under the old lady's skirt, we can see she has double jointed pin knees, and you can actually bend them a bit. Even more if you align it with this slit in the back. But with nothing in the hip, I don't really know what good this does. Octavius, of course, has ball jointed hips. They can kick up about 90 degrees and split this wide. He does have thigh cut, though it frankly baffles me why they didn't line it up with this seam. But moving down, he has pinless double jointed knees, no boot cut surprisingly, but both figures have ankles that can hinge and pivot. Obviously, Aunt May isn't all that articulated, but honestly, she doesn't have to be. And bendy arms notwithstanding, I'm happy that they didn't cheap out on OCK's articulation either. They even went the extra mile to give him that ball jointed waist when it would have been easier just to make it a swivel cut. For posability, I'm giving Dr. Octopus 1 whole point. Aunt May, on the other hand, gets half a point. Moving on to playability, and I am very happy to report that my prediction was wrong. Otto's tentacles are packed separately, and we'll talk about those in a second, but each figure comes with a pair of alternate fists. You know, for when Aunt May goes foxy boxing. Although at her age, it's more cougar clobbering. Of course, you're going to want the fist for Dr. Octopus, especially considering that his alternate hand is a weapon holding one, but he has no weapon. It makes me wonder if they were considering giving him one, but then didn't at the last minute, or they figured we have enough guns with other figures and could just get creative. For those who are wondering, this is the one that came with Stiltman. Of course, the accessories everyone's excited about are the bendy tentacles. Benticles? Anyway, they simply plug in here like so, and voila! Something I've been wanting to be able to do with my Doc Ock figures for a very long time. In general, I really like these, but with an asterisk. First off, let me say that I think the length is good, and they are sufficiently bendy. That being said, I really wish that they were more snug in the backpack, as they have a tendency of wanting to droop. You could always crazy glue them in place, but that would be limiting. As for propping them up, it can be done, it just takes a little bit of finessing. But playability is more than big ol' bendable tentacles. It's also about how well your figures play with others. Starting off with some characters who can apply to both Doc Ock and Aunt May, and here we have Gwen Stacy, Anna Watson's niece Mary Jane, J. Jonah Jameson, and Peter Parker, whose spider sense is a tinglin'. As for that dreadful Spider-Man, and here we have Pizza Spidey, the retro card, which I honestly still kinda like best, Renew Your Vows, which benefits from pinless joints and toticulation, and for the one closest to the Walmart animated series version, here we have the figure from the Amazing Friends box set. This is the exact same body used for the animated series, just with a different head and no cell shading. Shifting our focus only to Otto, and here we have the Black Cat. This is the original release and not the retro card, but for some animated series style retro card villains, and here we have the Green Goblin. There's a new one coming out with Mary Jane. Here we have Shocker! Shocker! Next up in Leapin' Lizards, it's Dr. Kurt Connors. As you can see, I finally added the retro card Mysterio to my collection. This is perfect for the comics, but I anticipate we're going to have an animated style VHS version of him too. Here we have Electro with their matching color schemes, the retro card Sandman, for the figure that kicked off Hasbro's animated series collection, and here we have Venom, but for just a couple of larger scale Spider-Man retro card villains, and here we have the Rhino, and the real big bad of the Spider-Man animated series, the Kingpin. For a non-retro card villain, and here we have Carnage. I don't have the VHS version yet, but I do think they go together. That said, for one of the most important comparisons, and here he is with the Marvel Legends comic book Doc Ock. If you were at all curious what a head swap would look like, here's the comic head on the cartoon body, and here's the cartoon head on the comic body. Personally, I don't think either of these work, but I'm far more curious about the tentacles. Technically, the new tentacles are backwards compatible and can plug in, but they are very, very loose. I would go so far as to say that you will absolutely have to glue these ones down to make them work with this figure. Personally, I don't know if it's worth it, but they are superior to the tentacles that came with them. Did someone say superior? Since we've already looked at Pizza Spidey, for a relative scale comparison, here's Doc Ock with the superior Octopus and the superior Spider-Man. But of course, one thing that never changes, here he is with Stealth Iron Man. I don't think any single toy line has given us more supporting characters than Hasbro Spider-Man. And that's to say nothing of giving us parts so we can make other supporting characters. As a lifelong Spider-Man fan, it is wonderful to finally get a proper Aunt May. But finally having an animated series style Doc Ock is pretty great too. For playability, I'm giving this 2-pack 1 whole point. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. This 2-pack is a Hasbro Pulse exclusive and retails for $52.99. That being the case, if Aunt May were the usual Marvel Legends $24.99, that would make Ock $28, which of course is still steep, but when you consider the bendy tentacles, isn't that bad. Assuming of course that you actually want both figures. A lot of us have been wanting this particular version of Ock for a while, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you also wanted Aunt May. I highly doubt we would have ever gotten Aunt May at all if she wasn't in some kind of a 2-pack, so this is honestly fine by me, but only you can know if it's worth it to you. So for price, I'm giving Dr. Octopus 1 whole point for a grand total of 5 out of 5. As for Aunt May, I'm also giving her 1 whole point for a grand total of 4.5 out of 5. Are you interested in this set? And if so, is it more for Ock or more for May? Sound off in the comments below and let me know what other animated series style characters you'd like to see. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.